So this is the Environmental TV Forum, mostly good news report. First item, this past month, Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey and Representative Grijalva of Arizona introduced proposed federal law to create permanent protections for American bison, grizzly bears, and gray wolves. So the bill is so new it doesn't even have a number assigned to it yet, but it's quite a long title. The bill is called the Tribal Heritage and American Bison, Grizzly Bear, and Wolf Restoration and Coexistence Act. So despite their important ecological roles, cultural symbolism during the 19th and 20th centuries, and even earlier, each of these species were hunted to the point of eradication for most of their historic range throughout the continental United States. So this bill directs the U.S. Secretary of the Interior to work closely with indigenous communities in the effort to protect these beloved animals. And it's wonderful that they're bringing in the indigenous communities, as the tribes were so closely aligned with wildlife and forests, etc. They consider themselves to be related to wolves and bison and grizzly bears. So they really have the inside track on that and a close connection. So it's good that this initiative is moving forward. Yeah, the next one is we're going to talk about the preservation of the Thompson Divide. So the Thompson Divide is a beautiful piece of land nestled between mountains, somewhat to the east of Aspen, Colorado. It's an important contiguous landscape, a very valuable type of habitat for wildlife. So Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland signed a public land order withdrawing 221,000 acres of U.S. Forest Service land and Bureau of Land Management land from a disposition under the public land laws and operation of the United States mining, mineral, and geothermal leasing laws for a 20-year period. So basically, to withdraw a piece of land permanently from a disposition, that takes an act of the United States Congress. But the Secretary of the Interior can do that on his own, or in this case, her own, for a period of up to 20 years. So almost 200,000 acres of that was withdrawn from the White River and Grand Mesa and Gunnison National Forests, and the rest of it, 15,000 acres, has been withdrawn then from BLM managed public lands. And so the withdrawal is authorized by the Federal Land Policy and Management Act. So it's a very interesting coalition. It's called the Thompson Divide Preservation Coalition that moved this action forward and had a lot of people in it, including environmentalists, but even mountain bikers who love that area, snowmobilers who love the area, and even ranchers. So it's a good initiative that's we're seeing move forward there. A Manitoba court is being asked to declare Lake Winnipeg to be a person with constitutional rights to life, liberty, and security of person. So the contention is contained in a lawsuit filed by the Manitoba Southern Chiefs organization, so managing many different tribes in Manitoba. They hope to use the lawsuit to force the government to hold public hearings on Manitoba Hydroelectric's license renewal to continue regulating the state's waters for power generation. It cites declines in the lake's fish, wildlife, and vegetation, as well as problems with algae, E. coli bacteria, and invasive species. So the lawsuit blames those problems on Manitoba Hydro's manipulation of water levels, which reverses natural flows and prevents the lake from flushing itself clean. The lawsuit says that Lake Winnipeg, one of the world's largest lakes, has a spirit, is alive, and is suffering. So the lawsuit is the latest attempt to establish rights for natural bodies. The Innu First Nation in Quebec has declared personhood for the Magpie River. And Alberta's Athabasca Chippewayan First Nation has sought the same for the Athabasca River. So that's a movement that we're seeing throughout many tribes across the world, even in New Zealand. And it's getting more and more momentum. And the court system in Canada is finding favor with that argument and is moving strongly in the direction of providing more rights to Native American tribes and the lands they control and or at least that they occupy, and for rivers, mountains, and other important pieces of ecosystem. In this past month, the Europe Space Agency has launched the last Vega rocket, placing the Sentinel-2C satellite into orbit under the European Union's Copernicus program to monitor the Earth's environment. It'll be used to study deforestation, urban development, emergencies such as forest fires, floods, volcanic eruptions. So Copernicus is the world's largest environmental monitoring effort. Satellites in the program will read Earth's vital signs, from carbon dioxide to wave height, temperatures of land, temperatures of ocean acidification. So positive outcome that made its way into space successfully. So after mounting a comeback over the past 3-4 decades, eagles are facing a new threat, or maybe an ongoing threat. A study of hundreds of bald eagles and golden eagles showed that nearly half of them had chronic lead poisoning. So the study examined bald eagles and golden eagles from 38 different states. So poisoning from these lead bullets slowed down population growth rates for bald eagles and for golden eagles. The report's findings should encourage more hunters to switch to lead-free bullets now that they know that. The problem is 100% human caused and is totally preventable. So states who are sympathetic to saving eagles have an example they could follow, which is the state of California. The state of California already banned the use of lead bullets for hunting. So instead, hunters are switching to copper bullets, stainless steel bullets. They're a little bit more expensive, but not much. So no state that's interested in this problem needs to reinvent the wheel, just to borrow the legislation from the state of California. Another piece of good news here is that banks are working toward deforestation initiatives. I mean, they're very aware of the problem. It's complex. So the Finance Sector Deforestation Action Initiative published a set of investor expectations for commercial and investment banks on eliminating commodity-driven deforestation, conversion to other uses, and associated human rights abuses in their lending and investment practices. So that's a lot. It's hard to handle all of those things, but banks are beginning to be aware of the problems they have created through lending to lumber companies, mining companies that are destroying the ecosystems throughout much of the world. So deforestation accounts for like 11% of carbon emissions around the world. And not only that, it's a big financial risk to investors and to banks and to the public. So these banks, just like insurance companies, have to be aware of risks. They are actually undermining themselves, undermining growth in the economy. I mean, I think they've been aware of some of the ills of deforestation over the years, but there seems to be more and more people who are, understanding it now. And I would think that through things like the European Habitat Restoration Bill, where they're looking at habitat that's been destroyed, by logging and by mining and other crops, commercial crops, that's starting to have an impact. And I think the New York Trees Act is something that's made them aware to some extent, especially with New York City being such a big financial center. So As shareholders in banks, investors have a fiduciary duty to ensure that banks consider and manage the financial risks associated with deforestation. So anyway, that seems to be a positive initiative. It's not locked down. It's may perhaps feel good initiative, but hopefully it will have some positive impacts. Recently in California, the city approved an industrial park next to one of the Earth's oldest trees. After months of deliberation, the city of Jurupa Valley approved a development next to an oak tree that's at least 13,000 years old. It's one of the world's oldest living organisms. It once sprouted next to giant ground sloths and other prehistoric creatures. So it's soon going to be 550 feet from industrial buildings. So the development is a 1.4 square mile project that includes 1,700 homes, an elementary school, and a light industrial park. One of the reasons that it was approved by the city was because the local building unions expressed their support for the project because it would create jobs. So environmentalists, however, raised concerns that development would produce an urban heat island effect, harming the tree. So the tree has already witnessed the entirety of recorded human history, and let's hope it survives the development. I also want to bring to your attention that the European Union, and probably other communities, are failing to enforce illegal fishing rules. There are fears that many vessels are flouting restrictions meant to protect fish populations by underreporting their catches or by discarding fish at sea. So the Court of Justice of the European Union ruled that member states could keep vital details of their implementation of fishing rules under wraps, in a blow to environmental campaigners hoping to use the information to show whether the regulations are working. So, because the fishing lobby is so strong, countries are often reluctant to enforce the rules stringently under pressure from uh, big fishing industries and small fishermen as well. We've got a problem with ospreys. Ospreys are vanishing. It's a bird of prey that feeds on fish and is not considered endangered, but declining in some areas. It's puzzled homeowners, boaters, and conservationists all around the Chesapeake Bay in the past few years. So a new study says that osprey chicks are starving to death in areas of the bay where their primary food source is a small nutrient-rich fish called menhaden. So environmentalists have seized on the report to support their fight against the menhaden harvesting industry in Virginia, which is pitted in a long-running battle to hold off regulatory limits. Sport fishermen are allied with the environmentalists, arguing that industrial harvesting has depleted the menhaden supply and harmed other species of birds and fish that feed on it, such as striped bass. Unfortunately, this is a little bad news report here, but it's rather important. So you've probably heard before of the British uh, fossil fuel company. They're notorious for burning coal still. It's called Drax, D-R-A-X. This week it said it planned to spend $12.5 billion in the United States building new biomass power plants with carbon capture and storage technology, taking advantage of United States subsidies through the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, the Inflation Reduction Act is mostly positive, but here, not so much. So the first plant will need a $2.5 billion investment, and 20 different sites are being evaluated for future projects. So on the positive, they have a new technology that captures emissions better than the previous technology. But what we're talking about here is burning wood pellets. So to burn wood pellets, you've got to get those pellets from our forests and our woodlands. And to the extent that they're coming from plantations, tree plantations, that's not quite so bad. But it looks like when they're ramping up like this to invest 12.5 billion, you're going to be cutting down more forests and more woodlands. So that's a big problem. So the absorption of greenhouse gases during the growth of the wood is also a factor. They're actually claiming that the overall impact will be carbon negative, enabling it to generate carbon removal credits. Yet this is, of course, is going to lead to a huge loss of biodiversity, to a loss of forests, uh, to a loss of rain, which comes from in the most of the country away from the coast. It's coming from a forest and trees and shrubs, and it's going to lead to a temperature increase, to more global warming. So it's a terrible example of a perfect example of greenwashing, and it's a very a dangerous project. Even in the European Union, they're calling a burning of trees and wood pellets to be an acceptable environmental activity that's allowed in the European Union. And of course, where they're getting their wood pellets from, the United States. So it's a huge uh, problem with policy that's developing, allowing the burning of wood pellets to be seen as an acceptable, environmentally acceptable action. So I just want to make you aware of that. You're going to see more about it. And we've been seeing full page spreads in some of the big newspapers just this week. I'll talk for a moment about some good news related to climate friendly apprenticeships. So we have an organization called the United States Climate Alliance. It's a coalition of governors in 22 states. They announced this week the launch of the Governor's Climate Ready Workforce Initiative. So governors of these states, plus 2 U.S. territories, say they want to get 1 million people to complete apprenticeships related to low carbon energy and other climate friendly jobs. So the career paths would include things like energy efficient buildings, how to install them, how to make them energy efficient, how to build them energy efficient. Likewise, offshore wind in New York State, installation of solar in New Mexico and Nevada. And this is an area, I mean, people can say they're against climate initiatives, they're against renewable energy. There's an awful lot of jobs there. And people might want to start getting involved in these apprenticeships. And from what I've heard, the young people of this country and most countries are very positive about the environment in terms of having careers in an aspect of environmental studies that helps the environment and helps the climate. So this seems like a very positive initiative. The news topic here is called Trees as Medicine. Louisville, Kentucky. The tree canopy had become a focus of a novel study that aims to bolster the public health case for urban greenery, for regreening. So a decade ago, Louisville, Kentucky had an unwanted distinction. With sparse tree cover and no ordinances or bylaws protecting trees on private property, the city had the fastest growing urban heat island in the United States. Since then, the city's been exploring a variety of green solutions to extreme heat and air pollution. The city launched assessments to determine how to protect and grow tree cover and where it was needed the most, culminating in an urban forest master plan. The team measured where the levels of air pollution were the highest and targeted the plantings in those areas. So the University of Louisville recently released the results of the tree study in an area where 8,000 trees and shrubs had been planted. According to the study, residents of these newly green neighborhoods had close to 20% lower levels of inflammation in their bodies compared to residents in neighborhoods where no new trees or shrubs were planted. Inflammation is a leading risk factor for heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. So trees are more and more being looked at as medicine, as something that can help human health, in addition to just the environment, the wildlife, and other aspects of nature. So trees as medicine.